So our last class, we talked about the purchasing cycle. We talked about conserving the costs, and monitoring our costs in the receiving and how we can ensure that what we are receiving, what we're paying for, is the product that we actually need. When we started talking a little bit about the issuing, and how we can make sure that we are minimizing our costs during the production of the food. And so in this, we want to make sure that we are maintaining the quality standards. What does that mean to maintain the quality standards during food production?
Have high quality food while maintaining like a low cost to do it.
Okay, so we want to maintain the quality while keeping our costs under control. Yes, right? So if let's say we have the opportunity to find like a lower cost item, we want to make sure we're maintaining that quality when we look at maybe potentially purchasing a different product. So that's a way that we can minimize the cost in that way. One of the issues that we have to keep in mind is that if we lower the quality of the ingredients, potentially that could affect the quality of the dish, and then the guests may not like it anymore. So we have to be careful of that. So, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Um, oh, like not taking in like bad quality of food. Like if you order something and it's from a whole different vendor, you can usually buy it and it's a little like an example, if the lettuce is starting to brown already,
Uh-huh.
then like we wouldn't really serve that food.
Right. So exactly. So if the lettuce is already browning, then of course that would be something that we would take into consideration of maybe finding a different vendor if the lettuce browns too quickly. Yep. So that might be in that purchasing and or receiving stage. Think about in the production stage. How do we maintain quality in the production stage of producing food? What do we think?
Uh, Through training.
Yes, through training, absolutely. Good.
Different ways of preparing what the lower quality product is to make it seem like it's still the high quality product.
Yes, in a way. I would say yes. Oh, I'm not recording. Oh, yes, I am recording. Just kidding. Um, yes, in a way. We can. There is a way to kind of elevate ingredients. Okay. I think training is one of the best ways. Okay. How many of you have ever been to a restaurant where when like let's say you were a regular and you're like, who's cooking in the back today? Right? Why does it matter who's cooking? Because if Bobby's cooking, then maybe today I'm going to have the steak. But if someone else is cooking, they don't cook the steaks as well, and so I don't want to order that steak today. I'm going to order something different, right? That steak should be prepared the same way every single time. So we want to follow those standardized recipes. And so when we do that, every time that somebody makes a recipe, it should be the same. Okay. So we're going to maintain that quality because the guests are going to expect something when they come in. If that's on the menu, it's a regular item, they're going to maintain or they're going to have that expectation of what that's going to look like. Maybe it's their favorite item and they come in and all of a sudden it looks different or it's a different quality ingredient. We've changed the recipe a little bit and then they may not necessarily like that quality any longer. We also want to use pictures because if there's four of us at a table and we all order the steak with baked potato and broccoli, the plate should look identical. Okay. That also is helpful because there is a focal point on the plate, correct? What is typically the focal point on the plate?
Well,
What's that?
in a circle
You
plate,
know,
center.
So it may not even be the center. No, it may not be the center. The protein, Caitlin, yes, thank you. The protein And whoever said that right above her. Lorena, excellent. Thank you. Yes, the protein is typically the star on the plate when it comes to the entree. Okay. And so that chef has designed that plate to be the focal point, right? When I worked at TGI Fridays, they always told us the best bite goes forward. So as a server, it's my responsibility that as I'm placing that plate on the table, the best bite is forward. We eat with our eyes first, okay? And so when the chef designs that plate presentation, they're doing it with a purpose. And so as servers, we need to respect what the chef has created and place it in front of our guests. And so by using those pictures, it allows us to know what exactly that plate is going to look like. Okay. Now that's if we've got like just like a menu, right? If we're doing a catering and a banquet and we're doing for a large group of people, then chances are my one job is to put the potatoes in this one spot on those plates, right? I've got 500 plates coming at me, and my one job is to put potatoes right there. Somebody else's job is to put the protein. Someone else's job is to put the vegetable, right? But what we want to try to do in like a regular service restaurant. I remember when I was working at TGI Fridays, the expediter had kind of a board that had each of the menu items. And so they knew exactly what it looked like. So before it goes out, they knew where the protein went, where the starch went, where the vegetable went. Why are we going to taste test prior to a meal?
Make sure the meal's not over seasoned.
Okay, so check the seasoning. Good. What else?
To make sure the
Yes.
dressing tastes fine.
Yeah, to make sure it tastes the way and to make sure it tastes fine. One of the biggest critiques that I hear from my chef colleagues when they have you all in the service classes is, did you taste your food? And the student usually says, no, I didn't taste the food yet. Well, how do we know if we want to serve it if we haven't tasted it yet? What if somebody accidentally put salt when there should have been sugar? Or vice versa, if somebody put sugar when there should have been salt? The recipe is going to taste off. Okay. And so we want to taste that prior to the meal. And then we also might do some taste tests during the meal as well. I remember when I was at Cheesecake Factory, oftentimes the managers would call me over and say, hey, can you put in these 3 dishes at random for this table? And what they're doing is they're basically testing the kitchen to make sure that when that plate comes out, it's going to look and taste the way the menu says it should. Okay. Everybody is on their guard when they know they're being watched. Think about it when you're driving on the highway and you see a police officer, what's your instinct? Tap the brakes, right? Even though if you weren't speeding, I'm gonna tap my brakes just because I want to make sure I wasn't, I don't want to get a speeding ticket. Okay. Everybody is on their guard, everybody is on point typically when they're being watched. And so by ordering dishes like that in a blind taste testing way, the cooks don't know that it's going to a manager. It's just going to a table number. And so that's something we can do to make sure that we are maintaining that quality during the meal service as well. With the production process, we also want to make sure that all the steps, all the recipes are being followed. All right, so using carryovers and proper temperatures. Why is it important? Think about it from a cost saving perspective, right? That's what this class is all about, controlling cost. Why is it important that we keep items held at the proper temperatures?
Prevent spoilage.
So it doesn't go bad. All right. Well, who's online? What did you say?
It prevents spoilage.
Exactly. It's prevents spoilage. What happens if something is, let's say it's a cold item and it's above that 40 degrees, 45 degrees or whatever, what's the temperature now? 41? Okay. When I was a student, it was 40. I guess 1 degree doesn't make a huge difference. So 41 degrees, if it's above that 41 degrees for 4 hours or even less than 4 hours, then we want to make sure that we're not going to make people sick because that could lead to a lawsuit, which then that would cost a lot of money. But then also just the simple fact of that product being thrown out because it spoils, or vice versa. If it's supposed to be held hot, we want to make sure it's above that 140, 141 to make sure that that temperature is maintained. If we're in that production process, we want to make sure that if it's a hot, let's say we're making sauces, like a spaghetti, like a marinara sauce or something, we want to make sure as soon as it's done, we want to bring that down into a safe temperature and store it and label it and date it so we can use FIFO. So all those things go into consideration. You would think that FIFO is common sense, but it really isn't. And so in that production process, if I take all that time to make spaghetti sauce or marinara sauce, and then somebody just pushes it to the back and then it spoils, well, not only am I throwing out that product that cost money, but I also wasted all that money and labor in making that sauce. And so we want to make sure that we're practicing those different things. Now, Jeff, this could go back to your comment earlier about taking cheaper items and maybe elevating them. And that's the idea of using carryovers. Okay, so let me give you an example of a carryover, and then I want you to think of your own example. Okay. When I was up in Maine, every first Sunday was spaghetti because spaghetti with meat sauce is a good home cooked meal. And these kids are going to be away from home for 2 weeks. And so we really wanted to kind of, some of them would get a little homesick. And so the first meal was always spaghetti with meat sauce. But it was also the first meal. So I didn't want to run out of food because what would that look like if I ran out of food on the very first meal? So I would always make a ton of spaghetti, like probably like 20 pounds of spaghetti just because I didn't want to run out because some kids could eat a lot of spaghetti. So then I had all these extra cooked noodles, and I'm like, what do I do with these extra cooked noodles? Spaghetti is cheap. It's a pasta, it's a dried pasta. It's relatively inexpensive, but I don't want to throw food away. And so one day I was scrolling and I saw a recipe for beef and broccoli, lo mein noodles. I always thought that you had to have lo mein noodles to make lo mein noodles, but they used cooked spaghetti, and I was like, boom, light bulb. So what I did is I would take all that cooked spaghetti from Sunday night, put it in the fridge, and then usually on Wednesday, maybe Thursday, so 3 to 4 days later, I would bust out that cold spaghetti, and then I would use the Asian Trinity, right? What is the Asian Trinity? Garlic, ginger, and soy sauce. Okay. Add a little bit of brown sugar to that and toss that sauce with the noodles. And then I put the frozen Asian vegetables on top and stuck it in the oven to heat everything up. And the kids thought that they were having lo mein noodles, but it was literally spaghetti from 4 nights ago, and they had no idea. Okay. So using those carryovers is a way that we can maybe take ingredients that are left over and we can maybe elevate them. We can make it a special. So when you call something a special, typically it draws someone's attention to it. And they're like, oh, well, I can only get it on this day. And so, of course, I'm going to go ahead and get the special. All right. So what can y'all think of are some creative ways to reuse stuff from a previous meal period and carry that over into a new meal period, but maybe kind of jazz it up a little bit? Any thoughts?
So what my family usually do, we'll make we're used to eating a lot because there used to be a lot of us in one household and we used to eat a lot, but we don't eat a lot anymore, but we'll have the same amount of food. So for the ground beef, we'll save it and we'll turn it into meatloaf.
Okay, yeah. So you might make extra, like, so when you're prepping, for example, when you're prepping, you may make extra knowing that you're going to be using it in multiple different things. Okay, good. Leftover day old bread turned into croutons. Absolutely. Yeah. So take that bread, chop it up, toss it with some olive oil, stick it in the oven, and now you've got croutons for your salads. When I worked at the Sheraton Gunther in the restaurant, whenever we had buffets, we'd have bread pudding. And it was my favorite bread pudding. And then I found out that it was all of the pastries from the bakery that were not used up from the day before. They just chopped them up, added them to the custard sauce, and I'm like, well, no wonder why it's amazing bread pudding, because they're literally using like laminated dough pastries for this bread pudding. It was so good. Um, Pieces of cake to make into cake pops. Absolutely, Leanna. So if let's say you make a mistake, rather than throwing something away, you can take that, roll it up, make it into a cake pop, and then you can resell that. Okay. I think there was another comment. I just want to make sure I get it. The day old bread. Oh yeah. So if you use that if you have leftover white rice one day, that could become your fried rice the next day. Okay. And they actually say that that's actually really good using that day old rice for the fried rice. All right. Yeah. So maybe if there's leftover fruit from something, we can take that and add it to a garnish to something. So that way it's not necessarily going to get tossed. All right. Okay. Yeah, Aaron, I like that. Using those extra peeled vegetables and putting them in to make a vegetable stock. So lots of ways. And of course, remember, this is all about conserving our costs. We want to make sure that we're getting the maximum out of our product. If I take something and reheat it today, can I cool it down if it's left over? Can I cool it down and serve it again tomorrow? The
Depends.
answer is no.
Oh.
No. Right? Think about your sanitation and safety class. Once you reheat something, if you don't serve all of that, like let's say we have soup, if we reheat that soup today, we cannot cool it down and reheat it again tomorrow and cool it down and reheat it again because that's going to go through that danger temperature zone multiple times. So typically, once we have something, if it's a leftover product, we reuse it today, we heat it up, we serve it, and then after that, we got to toss it away. Okay. Um, for health and safety reasons.
I worked at a real quick at a
Yeah.
restaurant many years ago called Cafe Soup, as they serve in Utah. Excellent soups. And they reheat their soups every day until we ran out.
Well, you can reheat if you make it one day, right? You can reheat it the next day, but you shouldn't be cooling that down and then reheating it again. So you can always reheat it one time. After that first time of reheating, we shouldn't, if it's still left over, we should toss it out. We shouldn't try to cool it down and then reheat it again. So does that make more sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. It's just unfortunate that they do that, and now you're finding out that you may be getting someone sick.
Yeah, because think about how much time that's spending in that temperature area. All right, good. Okay, so let's talk about beverages. Beverages, true or false? Beverages have recipes just like entrees and appetizers. Who can give me an example of a beverage that has a recipe?
Cuba Libre, Long Island,
Long Island iced tea, good.
strawberry lemonade, the ratio of strawberries.
Old fashioned, a strawberry lemonade, good. Smoothies, good. Right? True lemonades, not just the stuff from the fountain, I guess. Yeah. So all of these things have recipes, they have ingredients, okay, that we want to make sure we are measuring, just like we would have in a plate of food. And so we're going to talk about these beverages today, okay? We want to maintain those quality standards by, again, following the recipes of our beverages. And just like we have the ingredient cost of food, our beverages also have ingredient costs. Okay. And there's an expectation that when I buy a bottle of wine, I'm going to get X number of dollars of sales out of this bottle of wine. Or if I buy a bottle of tequila, I'm going to make X number of margaritas with this, which means I'm going to bring in this amount of sales based on that particular bottle. And it's all about measuring. Now, in the US, we love to use ounces, cups, pints, gallons, quarts, all of that kind of stuff, right? The majority of the rest of the world likes to use the metric system, which is liters, milliliters, and whatnot. So, one conversion that you have to memorize, is the 1 liter is equal to 33.8 ounces. Okay? So 1 liter is equal to 33.8 ounces. Now, in metric, 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. That's so easy. But in the imperial system, 1 liter is equal to 33.8 ounces. Okay?
We have to make everything harder.
Yes. So, if we want to know how much a 750 milliliters is, okay, 750 milliliters, if that is 0.75 of a liter, then we take 33.8 ounces and we multiply by 0.75. You guys see where I got those two numbers from? So
Yes.
33.8 ounces is a liter, and then the 0.75 is equivalent to 750 milliliters. So when we do that, what do we get?
25.35.
25.35? Okay. Can we make that 25.4?
Yes. No, we cannot.
No. Can I come up with 0.05 of an ounce of liquid out of nowhere? No. Okay. So we would either keep it at 25.3 or just go ahead and keep 25.35. Okay. So 25.35 ounces. And why do I use that particular measurement of 750 milliliters? Any thoughts?
Is that the usual serving of a drink amount?
Well, it depends. It's the size of a bottle of wine. So is that your normal size of a
Oh,
drink? I'm just kidding.
it depends on the day.
Yeah, so 750 milliliters is the traditional size of a bottle of wine. Okay. And then liquor usually will come in a 750 milliliter or 1 liter, right, bottle. So the reason why we like to use that 750 milliliters and turning it into ounces is because a lot of times our servings are in ounces. So if I were to serve a 6 ounce portion of wine, so my traditional serving size is 6 ounces for a glass of wine. How many servings do I get out of that one 750 milliliter of wine?
4.2225.
Okay. So thank you, Lorena. 4. Good. Okay. So we would get 4 servings out of that 25.35 ounces. Okay. So we divide this by our 6 ounce serving. And that's going to give us 4 servings with 1.35 ounces over. Okay, that's going to be 1.35 ounces left. That is what we call spillage. Well, not what's left is called spillage, but spillage is the idea that we're maybe not going to serve exactly 6 ounces. Maybe one time I might serve 6.5 ounces. Okay. The glassware that we typically will use usually will help us with our pouring. So there may be a logo on the glassware and they say, okay, pour the wine up to this point on the logo. Or when I was over in the UK visiting a friend, we went out to a bar and I was in this phase of collecting Hard Rock pint glasses. And Hard Rock Cafe pint glasses, the souvenir pint glasses you get are actually 20 ounces. So they're 4 ounces larger than a pint. And it was really interesting because when I was over in the UK, she explained to me that I couldn't get my beer in my Hard Rock pint glass because it was technically 20 ounces. They had to serve the beer in a glass that was exactly 16 ounces. So when you ordered a pint, they couldn't just guess and leave extra space on the Hard Rock glass. They had to have a specific glassware for that beer, so it was exactly a pint. And it even had lines on the glassware. So if somebody ordered half a pint, the bartender knew where to pour that beer to. I thought it was really interesting. But that spillage allows us to spill, allows us to maybe serve a little bit extra if we, make a mistake or whatnot. So we should be getting four servings out of that bottle of wine. Okay. Sometimes too, also, I've seen in a lot of restaurants where they bring an empty glass of wine, an empty wine glass, and then they bring like a little mini carafe that has your like wine in it, and then they pour the wine into your glass. It just adds to presentation. I'm not really sure it does anything to the flavor, the taste. But it's maybe a little bit easier to measure that little carafe versus a big wine glass. So typically, wine markup is going to be 300%. Okay. In a restaurant, typically what you pay for by the glass is what that bottle costs. Because then that way, at least if I sell one glass and I open that bottle and then once oxygen hits that wine, it starts deteriorating. And then if it spoils before I can serve another glass, at least I've covered my cost for that one bottle. And so basically, when we think about serving wine, that first glass is covering our cost, and the other three glasses that we serve are basically profit on top of that. $16 to $18 per glass for a 4 ounce or 5 ounce pour. Okay. Depending on the wine and the quality of the wine, that can make sense. All right, so I do actually have an example in here that I want to pull up in my class discussion notes. Here we go. So let's work on this example together. We buy a 750 milliliter bottle of Jack Daniel's of whiskey for $22.09. So a standard pour is 1.5 ounces. So how many servings should we expect to get from one bottle? Okay, so let's go back to our message here. We have 750 milliliters. How many ounces does that equal?
Is that the 25.35?
25.35 ounces. Okay, 33.8 was for the full liter. So 25.35 is for the 750 milliliter bottle. So what's our average serving size? 1.5 ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 1.5 ounces. 25.35 divided by 1.5. Do we get 16.9? Okay, can I make that 17 servings? No. So what is that 0.9? What does that equal? The spillage. That gives me an opportunity to maybe pour a little bit over, or if I actually literally spill as I'm pouring. Okay, so that's 16.9. So we're going to call it 16 servings total. Okay, so I'm going to get 16 servings. Now, if I don't have any spillage, that 0.9 is going to be left over, and then I'm going to open a new bottle and finish off that 1.5 ounce. And so and technically I'm actually going to get that 16.9, which means I'll get a little bit more revenue out of that bottle if I don't actually have to use that spillage. But we want to cost it out based on 16, so that way we can guarantee we should be getting that money for those 16 servings. Okay. So what is our cost per serving? Remember, if we write it vertically, cost per serving, what does that word per represent?
Divided.
It represents division. So in this case, cost per serving would be $22.09. That's what our cost for our bottle is. We divide that by 16 servings. Okay. 2209 divided by 16 comes out to $1.39. Cost me $1.39 per 1.5 ounces of Jack Daniels. Okay. If I sell it on the rocks for $7.50, how much sales, how much money should we get from one bottle? $7.50 times how many servings?
16.
16.
153.
$7.50 times 16 is
20.
$120. So I should expect to get $120 every time that bottle is empty. I should have cash register receipts for $120 worth of receipts for that one bottle. Okay. What happens if my bartender only gets 13 servings from the bottle? How much sales did we lose? So how many should we have gotten?
16.
16.
16, right? If they only get 13, how many less servings is that?
3.
3 less servings, okay. And if I multiply that by $7.50,
Sorry, 550.
that's $22.50 that I'm missing in sales. I've served, right? I've served the extra amount, but instead of getting 16 out of that bottle, I only got 13. Because maybe I gave somebody a drink. Maybe I poured a double or maybe I poured 2 ounces instead of 1.5 ounces. There's lots of different things, okay? So if this happens every day for a year, if we lose this money every day for a year, that $22.50, let's do this in blue. Let's say we're closed 5 days a year because we love our employees and we don't work every single day. 360 days a year. $22.50 times 360 days, $8,100. Bless you.
Yep.
What could you do with an extra $8,000 in a year?
Damage repairs.
And that's one liquor. That's just one beverage from your whole bar. $8,000. It adds up. Okay, you could get new equipment. What you could do, so we have different ways that we can control costs with our beverages. We can measure, so we have pour spouts that actually have a little ball bearing on the inside. So think about like a hamster cage, like a little hamster watering dish where you pour it out and the ball stops, so it stops the flow of liquid. But when you tip it up right, that ball goes down. So when you tip it over first, there's a little bit of water that comes out. Same thing happens with those types of spouts. And so it is designed to pour exactly 1 ounce of liquor when you do the pour spouts like that. They also have computerized where they have a little device that you put over the top of the bottle. And then when you put it upside down, it electronically controls the flow and it only pours an ounce. And so you have to reset it and then pour it again. Yeah. And so we also do what some bars will do is they do it's called free pouring or counting. So counting six, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is about an ounce. It's not very exact, and that's where you fall into situations where you might be over pouring. Okay. So it's really important, just like when you are cooking, if you have a teaspoon of salt, do you just take the salt and pour it over and shake it into the dish? No, you're going to use that teaspoon. You're going to use that measuring tool to be able to do that. Okay. Exactly. No one counts the same. So for me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 could be an ounce and a half, or somebody else could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you're pouring liquid that whole time, that's going to be a variation. I remember when I worked at TGI Fridays, the bartenders had count tests they had to do. So they used water in a bottle, and then they would have to pour, they'd have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'd have to count into a glass and then pour it into a test tube. And on the test tube, there was a line for an ounce, 3/4 of an ounce, 1/4 of an ounce, 1.5 ounces. And they had to pass that test a certain number of times during their pre-shift before they went on the shift. So that way they knew that they were still keeping their counting pretty consistent. I thought that was interesting. All right, so let's watch some videos about conserving our bars and different ways we can do that. I am going to stop the recording at this point because they are YouTube videos and YouTube doesn't like me watching and recording other YouTube videos. But the video link should be posted on Canvas because we're not going to watch the entire video of both of them.